He thought he was just being honest, said he was doing a little better lately, trying to stay positive. He didn't exaggerate. He didn't lie. But weeks later, the letter arrived. His PTSD rating had been reduced. The benefits he depended on? Slashed. No warning. No second chance. Just a quiet, calculated decision based on one conversation and a few careless words. That's the part no one tells you. When you walk into a reevaluation, you're not just checking in, you're being examined for signs of improvement. The system isn't always looking to support you. Sometimes it's looking for a reason to reduce what you've been given. And the most dangerous part, you might hand them that reason without even realizing it. Because it's not about lying or faking. Most people lose their benefits by being too casual, too polite, too eager to sound strong. They say things that feel honest, but those same words get twisted into evidence that they're doing fine. And by the time they figure out what went wrong, it's too late. In this video, we're going to break down 5 phrases that seem harmless, even responsible, but can quietly destroy your case. If you've got a reevaluation coming up or know someone who does, keep watching, because one sentence could cost you everything. It's one of the most common things people say, and one of the most misunderstood. I'm doing better these days. It sounds harmless, optimistic even. You're not saying you're healed. You're just saying you're not in crisis. Maybe you're sleeping a little more. Maybe the panic attacks aren't daily anymore. Maybe you've figured out how to manage the worst of it. But here's the problem. The VA isn't trained to hear nuance. They're trained to spot progress. And when they hear better, what they often write down is improvement. That one word becomes the beginning of a different story, one that says your symptoms have decreased, that your condition is no longer as disruptive, that maybe you don't need the same rating anymore. And just like that, your benefits are on the line. It doesn't matter that better for you still means waking up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, or avoiding crowds because your heart races every time someone stands too close. Better is subjective, but once it's in your file, it becomes objective. And if you don't explain exactly what better means and how far you still are from okay, you've just handed them a reason to cut you down. You're not wrong for wanting to sound hopeful, but in a reevaluation, hope doesn't protect you. Clarity does. A lot of people walk into a reevaluation already on the defensive. They don't want to seem like they're exaggerating or making a scene, so they lead with something like, "I don't want to seem dramatic." It sounds humble, reasonable. But that one sentence does more damage than you think, because the moment you downplay what you're going through, even slightly, the system takes you at your word. What you mean is, "I know this sounds bad, but it's real." What they hear is, "It's probably not that bad." And once that tone is set, everything you say after gets filtered through that same lens. Instead of seeing someone struggling to survive their symptoms, they see someone who's just a little stressed, someone managing fine, someone who doesn't seem too concerned. And here's the real problem. The VA isn't looking at the emotion behind your words. They're looking at patterns, behaviors, and how you present your condition. If you casually gloss over flashbacks, panic attacks, or emotional shutdowns, even with a smile, those things don't sound severe. They sound stable, manageable, non-disabling. You're not trying to lie. You're trying not to sound weak. But this system doesn't reward modesty. It records it. So when you say, "I don't want to seem dramatic," you're already giving them permission not to take your symptoms seriously. And once that door is open, it's hard to close. One of the quickest ways people get misunderstood during a reevaluation is by talking about work, specifically saying something like, "I still work full-time." On the surface, it sounds responsible, productive, like you're holding things together. But unless you explain what that really costs you, the system will assume you're fine. They'll hear full-time job and translate it into high-functioning. And just like that, they'll start questioning why you're rated at all. What they won't see are the breakdowns after a long shift, the constant masking, the panic you hide in meetings, the migraines, the skipped lunches, the exhaustion that lingers for days. They won't understand that every ounce of your energy goes into surviving the workday, and that by the time you get home, you're completely wrecked. Working doesn't mean you're well. It means you're surviving, and the mistake so many people make is assuming the VA will see the difference. They won't, not unless you explain it. Not unless you say, "Yes, I work, but it's brutal. It affects my sleep, my relationships, my health. I break down on weekends. I avoid people. I'm only getting through it because I have no other choice." The truth is, many people force themselves to keep going because they need the income or they're afraid of being seen as lazy. But if you don't tell the whole story, the part they hear will be used against you. You're not being judged for having a job, but you will be judged for how your symptoms impact your ability to function. And if you leave that part out, they'll assume there's no impact at all. If there's one phrase that almost guarantees misunderstanding, it's this: "I just push through it." It's something people say when they're trying to sound resilient, like they're holding everything together through sheer willpower. And while that may be true, what the VA hears is something completely different. When you say, "I push through it," you're telling them your symptoms aren't stopping you. They're just inconveniences. You're unintentionally framing your condition as something you've learned to ignore. And if they believe you're functioning without much disruption, they'll assume your condition is under control. But what gets missed in that phrase is the cost: the physical exhaustion, the emotional crashes, the relationships that suffer because you're too drained to show up, the sleep you lose, the time you spend pretending everything is fine when it's absolutely not. Pushing through doesn't mean the symptoms are gone. It means you're hiding them better than most. The system doesn't reward effort. It measures impact. And if you present yourself as someone who gets through it, even when it's killing you on the inside, they'll write down that your daily functioning is intact, that you're coping, that your condition is not interfering with your life in a significant way. You're not weak for struggling. You're not dramatic for saying what it really feels like. But if you keep painting yourself as someone who powers through everything, they'll believe you're stronger than your condition, and that alone can cost you everything you've earned. The last one might surprise you because it sounds like progress. "I don't really think about it anymore." People say it with relief, as if they've finally put the worst behind them. Maybe they mean the memories don't haunt them daily. Maybe they've learned to numb themselves, to compartmentalize, to move on without talking about it all the time. But to an evaluator, that sentence doesn't sound like coping. It sounds like closure. And that's where things get dangerous. When you say you don't think about it, they may assume the trauma is resolved, that the emotional impact is no longer active, that the condition has faded into the background. But what they don't see is that avoiding the thoughts can be part of the problem, not the solution. Emotional detachment, suppression, numbing, those are classic symptoms of trauma. But if you don't explain that, it gets mistaken for recovery. So instead of hearing, "I've learned to shut it out so I can function," they hear, "I'm no longer affected." And just like that, your rating is on the chopping block. It's not your job to stay stuck in the past. But if you've gone silent, if you've buried it just to survive, you need to say that. You need to explain the price you pay for keeping it out of your thoughts, because not thinking about it doesn't always mean healing. Sometimes it means you've gone numb, and the system won't know that unless you say it out loud. The truth is, most people don't lose their benefits because they lied. They lose them because they were trying too hard to sound okay, trying to be humble, trying not to seem like a burden. But in this system, the way you phrase your experience matters just as much as the experience itself. And if you aren't clear, painfully clear, about what you live with every single day, your story will get rewritten without you. So if you're heading into a reevaluation, don't soften your words. Don't filter the truth to sound more acceptable. Speak plainly. Describe exactly how your symptoms affect your life, even if it feels uncomfortable. Because those conversations aren't just paperwork, they're protection. And if you've been through this before, or know someone who's about to, don't let them walk in blind. Share this video. These small phrases might not seem like much, but they can change everything. Thank you for spending your time here today. If this helped you in any way, let us know in the comments, even just a number 5, if you made it to the end. We read everyone, and your support truly means more than you know. If you haven't already, consider subscribing and turning on the bell so you don't miss more content designed to protect and empower people like you. Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next video.